Hello and welcome to UAS Magazine's bi-weekly podcast. I'm your host, Dayna Bastian. Today, I am excited to be joined by Aaron Pierce, CEO of Pierce Aerospace, a Techstars-backed company focused on remote ID technology for drones. Aaron was the entrepreneur in resident for the first U.S. Air Force accelerator with Techstars, is a founding member of the White House Chartered Unmanned Aircraft Safety Team, and led Indiana's UAS Integration Pilot Program. Welcome, Aaron. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Dayna. Much appreciated.
Thanks. We're excited to have you on board for this podcast. Today, we're going to dive into the topic of dual-use startups. But first, Aaron, can you talk a bit more about how you became involved in the UAS industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was a fun start. I got started back when I was in graduate school. My university had started a drone research center, and they had no one with any aviation experience or drone experience in the university. So it's kind of par for the course back in 2014, 2015. I had previously volunteered as a EMT and Huey helicopter aircrew member with a search and rescue organization in Indiana where we restored and flew Hueys. So I took that background in and helped them to craft their policy and ops manuals that they could use for the drone research center. And while I was doing that, I saw that this was a great time to get into a growing industry, one that was really getting its legs underneath of it, with a lot of opportunity both on the commercial side and the defense side that we were seeing kind of come to light around that time. So officially started the company in 2016 and took off from there, originally building a drone logbook system.
Okay, wow. I didn't know all of that. And I think back, honestly, to one of our earliest conversations here, and it might have been the absolute first conversation I think I ever had with you. And I remember you mentioning that often your mornings were filled with meetings with military and your afternoon kind of switched to commercial conversations. And I really don't think that there is any better explanation as to how a company can operate in both government and commercial spaces is that. So Pierce Aerospace, can you walk us through kind of that journey that you've gone through? You went through the tech accelerator process, how you landed in the Techstars Air Force Accelerator program, and kind of where you're at today.
Yeah, absolutely. So in 2017, Drone Enable had a call out for identification, and that's the ICAO Drone Enable up in Montreal that year. And I saw the call, and we were building identification, really thinking more deeply about how to apply identification to UAS operators and the implications of that on a large commercial scale once these things started to scale out for delivery, and how that would start to change a little bit, and also thinking about it from a broader, IoT perspective of what does it mean to have somebody be responsible for a device. And I thought, what the heck? Let's throw a white paper out there, crafted it, sent it out, and was actually surprised to get a call to go present in Montreal then a couple weeks after we submitted that. So I was super excited, saw that we were onto something, or at least it looked like we were onto something. So decided to pivot and focus purely on the identification piece then from a company perspective. Shortly after that presentation, we got the attention of Techstars and the U.S. Air Force, and they were putting together the first ever dual-use, government and industry-backed accelerator program, with the U.S. Air Force being the primary sponsor for the program. So we were still too early from a company perspective to really dive through a Techstars accelerator yet, but they invited me to join as an entrepreneur in resident so that I could continue to incubate that idea, while also working with the other companies in the cohort to help them on business development and maturing some of their ideas and getting them connected into the broader autonomous vehicles and uncrewed systems industry.
Okay, so what would you say as part of the accelerator process, something that you really took away from that and that you're now using today in your everyday business opportunities?
Yeah, so starting businesses from scratch has its own unique set of skills, oftentimes wearing multiple hats and then, working to help a bunch of others get started and seeing the different perspectives of 10 other companies, while also representing Techstars and building Pierce Aerospace at the same time. Gave us a pretty wide swath and views of how different companies were doing things. And I'd say the biggest thing that I took away from that whole experience was a unofficial MBA on how to start something from scratch in a business world. Startups are completely different from larger corporate types of ventures. So it was definitely an educational experience.
Right. And even in this industry, you're constantly learning, right? So,
Constantly, never
right.
stops.
I feel like I learn something new every single day. And why, Aaron, do you feel like dual use startups are so important, especially in the UAS sector?
It's a good question. I'm trying to think of how I can answer it succinctly. But so first off, dual use means that the technology, the company is producing something that has applicability both in a commercial marketplace as well as in a defense or a security marketplace. And the value in that is that you can potentially get a lot of your bootstrapping done and become a revenue-backed startup very early on without having to give up equity or go raise money for a very early idea. The Department of Defense and some of those other government agencies through the SBIR and STTR program will take a risk on you to go develop something if they see that it has some applicability for their needs. At that same time, if you have something that as a commercial is commercially applicable and can be adapted one way or the other, then that as a company provides you with greater market opportunities. And the U.S. government looks at that as you having less risk of being completely dependent upon, contracting in the government marketplace, which is something that I know that they're trying to get away from to some degree. You can't do it in every angle or market per se. There's frankly just always going to be not a great large commercial market for fighter planes, but something like a drone or drone technologies that support drones, those have a lot of wide commercial marketability. And as the markets mature, that commercial marketability is going to be wider than it ever would be on the defense side. And that's where it becomes very interesting when looking at the economics and market dynamics from a startup as, do you pick one or the other to start in? Do you start commercial? Do you start defense? Or do you kind of work both at the same time? And that's going to vary based on any type of, whatever the product is and the market variables. But when you start to evaluate it from that perspective, you can start to pick some very interesting navigational points in how you can grow a startup into a larger company that is producing valuable products.
Right. And you kind of hinted a little bit into my next question here. A lot of these companies do start, especially if you're starting from a DoD side of things, a military government side of things, you're getting that funding from the government. But at some point that funding either is going to go away or you need to find other ways to implement your product into a commercial space. So how can that government funding be used to accelerate those plans for your business and drive product development forward so that you can be successful in a commercial space?
Yeah, absolutely. So we chose the path of kind of working both defense and commercial technology simultaneously, just as an example on our end. And some of the innovations that we were able to build, one side supports on the defense sector, one side supports on the commercial sector. Now, keep in mind that some of those government programs have very high dollar values associated with them. So it may take you a little while, but from a market perspective, it could be a very large win that comes at the end of working, not really the end, but comes from part of the journey of working on that defense side. But to get back to the core part of the question, we start to piece together the different technologies and the different ways of how we've gone about building our product roadmap, so that, we're doing one project here, we're doing another project on the commercial side, another project on the defense side. And then we start to map that tapestry together to get to where we are this fall, going to be deploying our remote ID capabilities into a couple commercial environments for some, what I would consider relatively advanced airspaces. And so we're pretty excited about that, knowing that we learned a lot on the defense space, and we're able to take those lessons learned and then go apply them into a commercial deployment of the technology. And those are things that are kind of invaluable, because what we learned was coming out of a high stress test environment, which I think will reflect in the commercial deployment of the system.
That's great. And I'm excited to see where this goes for your company, and looking forward to seeing more about Pierce Aerospace's journey moving forward with this remote ID rollout. Thanks, Aaron. We are nearing the end of our time here today. I do try to end our podcast with a bit of a fun question. Aaron, you attended the UAS Summit in Grand Forks for the first time last year, and you're coming back to moderate and attend this year. What are you most looking forward to at the summit?
Oh, good question. So I always learn something, and that's always good. I love going back to places where I'm going to learn something. But I'd say the big one is the people. Had a great time with everyone, and really quality events. And the people that you got to know from that and got to engage with really came away from the event last year going, these are great people that I am happy to consider new colleagues and folks that I look forward to continuing to work with. So that's my biggest one. People is the big thing there, and I'm excited to go hang out with all the new friends I met last year and continue to work on some different things that we've been discussing that we can then bring to the industry.
That's awesome. Well, we're really excited to have you back here at the summit, Aaron. And building and fostering those relationships is really the goal of the summit. We want people to learn everything and learn new things, and companies to showcase themselves. But really, at the end of the day, getting together, meeting new friends, connecting with some old ones, and fostering new business is really what we're all about. So thanks again, Aaron, for joining us today. And to our listeners, until next time.